So this is looking at pulling together some ideas on Romeo and his views about love. So if you're doing the AQA syllabus, then you will be given a short extract from the play, about 25 lines, and asked to comment on how an idea, a character and or a theme is presented in that extract and how it's presented elsewhere in the play. So really you're looking at focusing in on those keywords of the question first of all. And here it's the character of Romeo and how his views about love are shown. So everything that you're saying is looking to talk about Romeo and how he is presenting himself as someone in love, as a lover, what Shakespeare is doing through the character of Romeo to comment on love. So the extract for the purposes of this task is this short conversation between Juliet and Romeo, or this extract of the conversation between Juliet and Romeo when he has seen her after they first met at the Capulets' party, and he makes himself known to her that after he's overheard her talking about him. And he speaks, and Juliet's response is, "My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of that tongue's utterance, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague?" And even though this is Juliet saying this, you can still use that evidence for Romeo, because actually it's presenting Romeo to Juliet as something which is kind of life-giving, something which is like sustenance, or the idea of kind of life-giving water or refreshment. So the idea that Romeo is now in love, and it is mutual, means that it's different from before with Rosaline. He carries on in his reply this religious imagery that he used during their first meeting, if you remember the sonnet in terms of Holy Palmer's touch, all of that. So he aligns love with almost a religious experience. So you can talk about his use of religious imagery to show how important Juliet as his love is to him. Now, there may be a place to compare and contrast Romeo and Juliet's responses to love here, because he is a very different type of personality than she is. Juliet is very practical. You can see that she's saying, how did you get here? How camest thou hither? Tell me, and wherefore? Why? How did you get here and why? And then the logic of the orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any of my kinsmen find thee here. So how did you get here? Why have you come? There's high walls, it was difficult to get here, and there's a huge danger to you. My relatives will kill you if they find you. And Romeo's response is anything but practical. So he does this thing of embodying love, of kind of near personifying love, that idea of love as Cupid with its little wings, or his little wings. So with love's light wings did I o'erperch these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out, and what love can do that dares love attempt, therefore thy kinsmen are no let to me. I use love's wings to fly over these walls. Stones can't hold love out, and actually, love can do anything it attempts. Your kinsmen are no kind of danger to me, no threat to me. And clearly that's wrong. He's kind of speaking in this romantic hyperbole. And it might be an indication that actually he's still adopting that persona of the Petrarchan lover. He's still using that kind of rhetoric, and not looking at the practical side. He's thinking emotionally rather than practically. Juliet is very practical, how did you get here? They'll kill you. Romeo much less so. Juliet's practicality there. If they do see thee, they'll murder thee. And he is meeting this with this romantic rhetoric and exaggeration and hyperbole. There's more peril in your eye than 20 of their swords. If you look at me sweetly, I'm proof against, I'm kind of immune against their malevolence, their enmity, their threats. And clearly that's not true. But it's Romeo as a certain type of lover is being that kind of romanticised ideal that he started the play as. Obviously, you can look at the fact that he's speaking in blank verse, indicative of nobility and honour, and she's replying in the same kind. So it's worth putting in that little form and structure comment somewhere into your notes. And again, each time she comes back practically, he comes back much less practically. I have night's cloak to hide me from their sight, and if you love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death provoked wanting of thy love. So, you know, it's better to die. A little bit of foreshadowing there. You know, ultimately, Romeo will die for love. So, you know, you can just structurally make that comment. And Juliet, again, her practical question, you know, whose direction found thou out this place? You know, who told you how to get here? And again, he answers, by love. So there's this repeated personification of love. Romeo's refusal to think about the practicalities of things, he's going for that emotional side of it, means that maybe he is still more of that Petrarchan love figure that he set himself up as when he was talking about Rosaline at the start of the play. He then, or this extract then finishes on this extended metaphor in terms of love as a journey, Juliet as a valuable cargo. It's a metaphor that actually Juliet kind of links in with later in the play when Capulet is calling her a kind of tossed bark at sea because she's so upset in her grief, he thinks, for Tybalt. So Romeo kind of uses that idea that actually, you know, she is very precious to him. You know, she is this such merchandise, such goods as he would venture to the farthest sea for. So you could possibly say possibly a context point in terms of Juliet and therefore women as possessions, and look at what that does in terms of love and balance, in terms of the relationship, but just a kind of a context point. Romeo's using it in a positive way. He's not using it in terms of, you know, Capulet says later to her, you know, if you're mine, I'll give you to my friend. Romeo's using that metaphor to, or actually it's a simile worked out as far as that, extended metaphor, to compare Juliet's worth to him at that point. Now, obviously, you've got to look at extracts elsewhere in the play, and a good way of doing that, or a good way of looking at how to start revising that, is to look in detail at some other extracts that give you that material and do the same kind of idea for them. It's a double whammy for revision because you are close reading, again, practicing another extract, and you're also kind of building up your quotation bank for this particular topic. So if we look at this extract, this is from much earlier on in the play when Romeo is talking to Benvolio just after there has been the first altercation between the Montagues and the Capulets that Samson and Gregory have been party to. And Romeo comes on and this is his kind of speech that's full of oxymorons about the nature of love. And he's talking about Rosaline here rather than about Juliet. So again, it's this personification of love. Alas, that love whose view is muffled still should without eyes see pathways to his will. Romeo, again, using this personification of love, using the idea, the allusion to the classical figure of love, that love is blind, you know, with a muffled view. And he is lamenting. So a lament is an expression of sorrow. He's lamenting the fact that Rosaline won't have anything to do with him, has kind of resigned herself to or committed herself to a life of chastity rather than love. And Romeo as a lover here is taking on that idea of the Petrarchan role. Petrarch, you'll remember, was the Italian poet who wrote a series of sonnets about unrequited love, and the love being so deep and so heartfelt, and the disdain of his Lady Laura being so damaging to him that the speaker becomes ill and pale and weakened by the fact that she's ignoring him. So Romeo here is establishing himself as that fashionable figure of the Petrarchan lover, because Rosaline is ignoring him. There's also an element of confusion about him, and some people will argue about this speech and say, well, it's entirely about his feelings for Rosaline. Some people will say, no, it's not about Rosaline. It's about what he's looking round at, the consequences and the implications of the fight that's just happened. I think you can make out an argument for both, and in fact for AQA, alternative interpretations are always a good way to go. So keep your mind open to the fact that Romeo is flicking between these two subjects, or there's ambiguity that it could apply to both of them, because he walks in distracted. He walks in kind of self-obsessed, absorbed in his own emotions, with that kind of exclamation. And then he asks Benvolio this question, where shall we dine? Oh me, and you'll remember that that is apostrophe, that technique, and it usually signifies some sort of intense emotion or surprise and things. So he notices, presumably, the kind of carnage around him. What fray was here? What on earth has happened? This is the aftermath of the fight. Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all before. As a Petrarchan lover and his feelings not being sincere, he is adopting a kind of fashionable cynicism about it all. I've heard it all before. I am in love. I'm suffering such woes that, this is unimportant to me. Yes, I've got such experience. It's actually something that he does towards the end of the play, far more convincingly, when he meets Paris at the tomb, when he's talking to the boy he takes with him to stand lookout, when he's talking to people. Then he seems to become much more mature and much older once he's experienced true love, and more importantly, what he considers to be the loss of true love through Juliet's supposed death at that point. I think he talks to Paris at the end of the play as if he were much older than Paris, and he's just not. So this is kind of foreshadowing his, in an insincere way, the general or the genuine growth and development and maturity he takes on once he's experienced love later in the play. So you can say that Romeo as a lover kind of grows and develops in maturity throughout the play. Here, this is a kind of put on. This is a mock cynicism or world weariness. And he starts to look around and says, here's much to do with hate, but more with love. So he recognises that the implications of what's gone on around him are to do with the feud, but he is more concerned with love, maybe. And you start to get then these oxymoronic images where he is, again, interspersing these with apostrophe to show the intensity of emotion, exclamation, etc., but to show the kind of chaos and turmoil that he's feeling. Now, this is where some people will absolutely say this is him describing love, brawling love, loving hate, anything, nothing, first create. He's all confused, etc. And there are some people who will say that this relates to the feud. It's brawling love, it's loving hate, everything is mixed up. I think it's both. He is portraying himself as someone who is ill, as love as a sickness, but something that's both beneficial and debilitating, but kind of the contrary. There's a lot of antithesis here, and that's that contrast, that balance within the line. To Shakespeare having Romeo using this imagery to show not only the confusion within him, but also the confusion in Verona, given the feud. And he fears he's being laughed at, and Benvolio says, no, I weep because your good heart is oppressed. That actually this is not a genuine love. This is something that is causing all sorts of pressure and strain on him, and Romeo seeks to justify that as a true Petrarchan lover, to say, look, you have to suffer if you're in love, griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast. So love is something that is heavy for him at this point. It's something that's giving grief. He says to Benvolio that the love that you're showing me adds to my own existing grief. Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs. So love is something that is insubstantial. See, later on you can look at the ideas of love being life-giving, actually being invigorating. Here it's not. It's a sea nourished with lovers' tears. A madness most discreet, a choking gall preserving sweet. So, this idea that love is something that is simultaneously positive and negative, whereas actually once he's fallen in love with Juliet and there is a more sincere feeling there, it is largely kind of just positive. And he believes that, Benvolio can't understand. And that's something that Romeo as a lover kind of says not only to Benvolio, but also to Friar Lawrence. He says later on in the play, if you'd been in this situation, I'm paraphrasing, but, you haven't been young and in love like me, and if you'd been in this situation, you would understand how I am feeling. Now I'm banished and I can't see Juliet. So Romeo as a lover kind of... his feelings are caught up in themselves, are inherently sort of inward looking at times. So that's that kind of extract, and you can take the quotations there to show Romeo's kind of inner conflict, Romeo's self-obsession, Romeo's kind of insincerity of his feelings there. And then extract 3, really important speech by Romeo, really famous. Obviously, he is seeing Juliet after the first meeting at the Capulets' party, and he has this speech when he is looking at her that she can't overhear. So straight away you've got this affiliation of Juliet with the light and the sun. So this is Romeo as a lover is comparing the object of his love to something which is life-giving, and that is kind of cosmically important. That Juliet is that kind of centre. I have had students in the past look at were we aware as a society or as a collective at time that the sun was the centre of the universe, but certainly even if that's not being played on here, it's that kind of heat and light and kind of restorative quality that the sun has. So he urges Juliet as the sun as is rising to kill the envious moon, who's already sick and pale with grief, that thou her maid art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. So the moon has connotations of chastity, obviously, and purity. And actually, Romeo doesn't want Juliet to be associated with chastity. He's already gone down that path with Rosaline. So says, look, you are better than the moon. The moon is envious of the sun, and the sun is Juliet. The moon is sick and pale with grief. That her maid, that the moon's maid, Juliet, the sun, is more fair than she. Be not her maid. So don't associate yourself with the moon and chastity. Don't be subservient to the moon, because she's jealous of you. And her vestal livery, the kind of clothes that she's wearing, the robes that she's wearing to associate herself with a vestal virgin, with kind of a woman who's staying chaste, is sick and green, and only fools wear it. So this is the idea of embracing the physicality of a relationship built on true love, as well as kind of the emotional side of it. And he urges to cast off that vestal virgin's robe, to kind of abandon Diana, abandon the kind of moon, abandon chastity, and embrace love. So it is my lady, oh it is my love, again apostrophe exclamation there. And she begins to kind of say something, or he can see her lips moving, but he can't hear her, he can't make out what she's saying. He believes her eye can speak, and he needs to answer it. And then kind of again, AO3 wise, context wise, this idea of the acceptable behaviour of lovers, this idea of the ritual of courtship. He can't be too bold, he can't speak out. He's intruding upon Juliet's private moments, and as we find out later on in this scene, she's embarrassed by that, the maiden blush on her cheek, and that she's given her vow before he did request it. She volunteers that, and the implications of that for a woman. But Romeo is sensitive to that idea of, kind of doing courtship the right way. I am too bold. And then you get again this cosmic imagery aligned with Juliet, that actually her eyes would be a good replacement for two of the fairest stars in all of heaven. So if this little section here, if two of the fairest stars in heaven have business, they'd ask her eyes to twinkle in their spheres, in their orbits where they were, until they return. So she's actually kind of, her eyes are as bright as the stars for him. The brightness of her cheek would shame the stars. So actually she surpasses in his view. So as a lover, he is absolutely kind of, I put surpasses. As a lover, he's kind of idealising, he's romanticising, he's comparing the object of his love and affection to this massively beautiful cosmic imagery. And it says, the brightness of her cheek with those eyes shining there would shame the stars as daylight doth a lamp. So it would be like comparing the sun to a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. So the idea that the brightness of Juliet's eyes could overturn the natural balance in a good way. The birds would believe it was daytime. They would be so illuminated. And that idea that Romeo continues to compare Juliet to light through the play kind of continues. And he watches her lean her cheek upon her hand, and there is a kind of a sensual image at the end, that if I were a glove upon the hand and I could touch the cheek. He wants not only that romantic contact with her, but the idea of physical contact with her. So in order to bring this to then, you might want to go through and look at some arguments about Romeo as a lover. I would look at Romeo as a lover when he is professing his supposed love for Rosaline, and look at his insincerity, get some context in there about the Petrarchan lover, the unrequited nature of it. Look at the confusion he is claiming to feel, the kind of pressure he's claiming to feel under that unrequited love from Rosaline. Look at the idea of when he first meets Juliet. For this piece as well, I deliberately haven't put in that first meeting, the Holy Palmer's kiss, because I know that's the subject of a different task. But certainly draw on the close reading that you've done for that as well, to look at the religious imagery, that idea of the Romeo portraying the loved one as a saint, Romeo portraying love as a religious kind of experience. And then looking at the cosmic imagery, the alignment with light, and the change in his sincerity that's not quite done at the point of the extract that's the focus of this question, the idea of love's wings that overperch these walls. He's not quite the more mature lover he is when he's delivering his soliloquies and when he dies at the end of the play. So try and come up with those kind of 3 or 4 clear topic sentences about Romeo as a lover is shown to, and substantiate those with your close reading of the extracts. Wherever you can, be using terms like metaphor, simile, blank verse, apostrophe, exclamation, antithesis, oxymoron, classical allusion, all of that kind of stuff to really get your AO2 together. Hopefully that helps, and do ask if you have any questions.